Chapter 17. Eyes closed, Teague listened to the sound of the water flowing along the sandy shoreline. In the trees, birds chirped and whistled. Red and orange light flickered through his eyelids. He inhaled. The smell of dank, sweaty clothes assaulted his senses. He wrinkled his nose and rubbed his eyes. Without looking over, Teague already knew Finn was not in the tent. More than likely, he was outside fiddling with the fire. It was normal for Finn to wake up early. He was a light sleeper. However, ever since they received the news about Cyrus and Craig, Finn was not sleeping at all. The first night, Teague figured it was because of the upsetting news. Then came the injury. Finn sort of slept then, if you could consider being knocked unconscious sleeping. He had hoped that last night, Finn could finally rest. He didn't. Teague stretched, then pulled his pants on and crawled out of the tent. The morning sun was bright, too bright. Holding up a hand to shield his eyes, he scanned the area. Crouched in front of the fire, Finn was barefoot, wearing only his jeans, his hair an unruly mess on his head, busily fanning the fledgling flames to coax them to life. Sitting beside him, chatting away, was Beth. Teague smirked. Finn must love that. Taking care to avoid the dirt, he stepped into one boot. The next one was not so easy. While hopping around on one foot, he struggled to get the boot on. All the while, Beth giggled at his antics. After nearly falling over more than once, both boots were finally on. He buttoned his pants and joined them by the fire. "Morning," said Beth, her voice a happy contrast to what he was used to hearing in the morning. The thought that she resembled a young child struck Teague, just waking up, happy to see everyone around them. He nodded. "Morning." He sat down next to Finn, then leaned close and gave him a peck on the cheek. "Did you sleep?" he asked. Finn's face twitched. "Yeah." He picked up a pot filled with water and placed it on top of a small circle of rocks at the edge of the fire. Teague wasn't buying the reply. Finn was great at conning people who didn't know him. That didn't work with Teague. With all the little uncontrollable tics and twitches, Finn's face betrayed his true feelings and thoughts every time. When his face twitched, he was covering something up, lying. When he twitched his nose, he was processing things, sorting through his thoughts. A tic in his left eyebrow meant he was surprised, in a good way. When he flared his nostrils or clenched his jaw, he was getting angry. And when the left corner of his mouth twitched, ever so slightly, fists were about to fly. Teague turned his attention to Beth. "How are you? Get some sleep?" "I did," she replied. "And you?" She was either naturally energetic first thing in the morning, or trying desperately to overcome a sense of awkwardness. He couldn't figure out which one. "I did," he replied, smiling. "We had a hell of a night the other night. After all that excitement, I needed to sleep. It was great." He watched as Finn stoked the fire, then got up and walked to the tent. Crawling halfway inside, he rummaged around noisily. "That's a cool tattoo," blurted Beth. She pointed to the compass above his heart. "I see Finn has the same one between his shoulders. I like it." "Thanks." Uncomfortable silence. Finn returned with 3 envelopes of instant oatmeal, 2 bowls, and some utensils. He reached into the flames to move the pot, then quickly jerked his hand back. He must have scorched his fingers. The water was ready, so he added the oats. Beth interrupted the awkward silence. "What happened the other night?" She paused. "If you don't mind me asking, that is." "Say again?" asked Teague. Beth gave a sideways shrug. "You said you had a bad night the other night. What happened?" Teague glanced at Finn, who was staring down at the pot, no doubt trying to avoid conversation. As they waited for breakfast, Teague told Beth all about the accident on the train the night before, and how, had that not happened, they would not have ended up in Denton, but continued to Austin. Finn divided up the oatmeal into the 2 bowls and handed one to Teague. He handed the other one to Beth, then ate directly from the pot. Beth turned and asked Finn, "Did it hurt when he was stitching you up?" Finn shook his head and swallowed. "Nah, not too much. You get used to it if it happens enough." "Happens enough?" she asked. "Do accidents like that happen often?" "Not really," he replied. Teague scoffed. "Alright, maybe it happens more often than some of us would like," Finn said, as he rolled his eyes. "That's better," snickered Teague. "That's a nasty bruise you got there, Teague. Does it hurt?" asked Beth. "It does," he responded as he moved his arm in a circular motion. This created a dull ache deep inside. His hand was weak. He clenched his hand. "But I'll survive." He winked at her. She seemed to be more comfortable with them. Her face became thoughtful. "Can I ask you a question?" "Sure." "What was it like for you, growing up?" Memories washed over his mind. The sweet fragrance of honeysuckle drifting through the air. Spanish moss hanging heavy from the trees. Humid, oppressive heat. playing in the bayou all day, sleeping on the screen porch at night, the heady scent of angels' trumpets, lilas, mosquitoes and the painful sting of cow killers. It was swampy, he grinned. In a lot of ways, it was a good time for a while. Then it all changed and went to shit. What was your family like? My mama and papa raised me for the first 11 years of my life. Their smiling faces flashed in his mind. My mama was a big southern lady. If you spoke out of turn, she had no issues slapping you back into place. The rest of the time, she was overfeeding you, and always ready with the hugs. Papa was a war vet. Korean War, I think. He had a mean streak when he drank brown whiskey, which wasn't all that often. He's the one who taught me how to fish and hunt. Across the fire, Zach stirred. Curled up in his sleeping bag, he opened his eyes. Morning, said Teague. Zach responded with a sleepy nod of his head in acknowledgement. He unzipped his bag and sat up. After rubbing his head, he pulled out a bottle of water. What about your mom and dad? Asked Beth. Teague scoffed. Ah, that putain. Her name is Grace. She didn't come around much. She was busy living her best life in the city. He shrugged. I imagine having a kid would be a damper on your party lifestyle. She was too busy sleeping around to care about her kin. As for a father, I don't have one. Or at least, I don't know who he is. I'm pretty certain it wasn't an immaculate conception. Not with old Grace. He shook his head and smirked. Once when I was 12, I asked her if she could tell me anything about him. She said she dated several men during that time, and couldn't be sure who he was. On my birth certificate, in the box where the father's name should be, it only says unknown. Grace always brought up dark feelings. When he was little, she came to visit. He would do his best to impress her. More than anything, he wanted her to like him. To stay with him, or take him with her. That never happened. As the years passed, his desire for her love and acceptance slowly gave way to deep disgust. I'm sorry, stammered Beth. I didn't want to bring up any bad feelings. Teague felt bad. He didn't care much for making others uncomfortable or upset. There was plenty of other opportunities for people to be upset. He didn't enjoy causing it. He shook his head. Don't apologize. I kinda lose my composure sometimes when she comes up. It ain't you. It's her. He smiled. My mama and papa made up for her. For every way that she was selfish and horrible, they were the exact opposite. It's hard to believe that two people like them raised a kid like her. What happened to them? Teague sighed. Same thing that happens to all of us. They died. First the old man. A few months later, she followed. Finn leaned against him and gave him a gentle shove. After shoving him back, Teague continued. It was for the best. After the old man died, Mama was a mess. She just gave up on everything. Even stopped leaving the house. She would send me to the shops for food and things. It was like her turn couldn't come soon enough. I guess that's what happens when you lose your soulmate. A part of you gets lost with them. That was when Grace moved back in with her small army of dirtbags. Cash shuffled up and sat down yawning. You people are loud. What the hell is with all the talking? He said, somewhat sleepily. I'm sorry, said Beth. We didn't mean to wake you up or anything. Don't apologize to him, said Teague. Yeah, he needed to wake up his lazy ass anyway, Zach chimed in. Cash punched him in the arm, then grabbed his water. Beth turned back to Teague. So, was that when you left? Teague shook his head. Not right away. Grace took over the house. I got to see up front and personal the way she lived her life. All the drugs, boozing, and losers. When I was little, the old man and I built a tree house out of old pallets in one of the giant trees out back. I moved into that full time. I was just waiting for the right time to leave. Teague thought about his days in the treehouse. The loud parties every night, sneaking down into the kitchen to steal food. Not because anyone would refuse him, but because he didn't want to interact with any of the people in the house. His treehouse was the only place he could call his own. Anyway, Teague continued. Sometime around my 14th birthday, I packed up and walked out. Didn't say goodbye. Just walked until I got tired, then curled up and slept. Woke up the next day, did it all over again. It probably took him a week before they even realized I wasn't around, you know? Teague looked around. All the grave faces. He needed to change the mood. It ain't all that bad. Had I never left, I would have never met this scrawny little scared kid. Finn shook his head. I wasn't scrawny. Laughter. Dude, chided Cash. You were pretty damn scrawny when I met you. And that was a good couple of years after you two met. Teague nodded. Cash chuckled. Yeah, I can only imagine how spindly you were. Twigs for arms with giant feet and hands. Like a puppy, chortled Teague, with a head full of out-of-control hair. He tousled Finn's hair. Finn pulled away. River's tent flap burst open. She put her shoes on and walked over to the fire, carrying a tin cup filled with water. After placing it on the rocks at the edge of the fire, she sat back to wait. "The princess has graced us with her presence," teased Cash. River punched him in the arm. "Shut up, peasant." Without looking at everyone, she asked, "So, what is everyone up to this morning?" "We were just chatting," replied Teague, as he winked at Beth. "Ah, cool," replied River. Her water ready, she prepared her tea. "Beth, is there someone who's going to be worried or angry about you being out all night?" asked Teague. Beth shook her head. "Not really. My mom and dad work a lot. They usually leave me to do my own thing. Sometimes we'll go 3 or 4 days without seeing one another." "So what you're saying is that odds are no one is at your house this morning, right?" asked River. Beth replied slowly, "Yes." Without skipping a beat, River asked, "Can we use your shower?" "Oh my god, a hot shower!" exclaimed Cash. "What is this hot shower of which you speak?" asked Zach. "Mais ouais, a hot shower would be great," said Teague. "Sure," Beth answered. "When was the last time you guys had a shower? It sounds like it's been a while." "We had cold showers a week ago. Hot showers are scarce," answered Teague, as the others nodded in agreement. "Hey, can we do some laundry too?" asked River. "I know we're asking for everything, but it would be nice to put on some clean clothes after a nice hot shower," she smiled. "Yeah, sure, no one will care." "So where's your house at?" asked Teague. "The north end of town. It's gonna be quite a walk from here. We might just want to catch the bus." Teague nodded. "Très bien," he said aloud. "All right, y'all, time to pack up. We're heading over to Beth's house."